from, institutions of power, from authorities of power, and from various establishments in this country.
All right, Dr. Wright-Rigueur, thank you very much for that. I want to go back to the streets of Minneapolis, where once again this began. Marcus Moore is there as night is coming in. Marcus, how do the streets feel there?
Terry, right now we're 45 minutes into the 8 p.m. curfew that's been in place, and just a few moments ago, we saw the police officers, SWAT members, pour onto the street here just outside the Precinct 5 police department.
The mission is so critical that the expectations of officers is deservedly very, very high.
Do you believe there needs to be more of a strict internal watchdog or somebody like an objective person within the department, because this officer in Minneapolis had many complaints against him, to find out before?
You are protecting a racist, white supremacist in the White House. How fucking dare you? How do you feel when you sleep at night? How do you feel when you sleep?
And that is what police officers and authorities here are trying to avoid as we are beginning to feel the tear gas as it gets into the air here. So, Terry, I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
All right, Marcus, thank you very much for that. As the curfew comes down in Minneapolis, we'll see how that goes, and stay safe out there. Los Angeles has a curfew as well. Our Matt Gutman, who we saw earlier walking with protesters, some of them getting right close to him, is now. Matt, I understand you are in Beverly Hills, which is not a place which is usually a scene of protests.
No, Terry, it's not. We're actually on camera, Lenny. There's cameraman Lenny. Thank you. There's graffiti all over the place. Beverly Hills, Terry, one of the many places that has curfew right now. Obviously, that's not in effect. This protest has migrated from downtown LA, where there were hundreds of arrests overnight, to Beverly Hills. And, the symbolism of this can't be missed, right? Protesters are taking their words, their placards, their spray paint to the very heart of privilege in America. Rodeo Drive is where everybody is headed right now. And I don't know if you can, there are people spray painting right behind us. I don't know if you can tell how many people are congregating just down this street, but it's in the many, many, many hundreds. Everybody who's been extended along this miles-long route that we've been marching for the past couple hours, and they've been at it since 9 a.m. Eastern, is now congregating here. We don't know what's going to happen. We do know that there's a curfew here, that every single officer in the LAPD has been told to be on duty, vacations, time off, canceled. There's an enormous amount of force that's being sent out here. We haven't seen police, though, in quite a while, except for right behind me. Sorry, when you turn around, you start seeing stuff. And you can see that, some of these protesters are scribbling spray paint right on this bank, feet away from police. So police are trying to let this, I think, organically fizzle out. Unclear what route this is going to take. This is the LA Sheriff's Department. So multiple agencies that we've seen, here. LA Sheriff, LAPD, Beverly Hills Police. Seems like everybody's marching pretty peacefully right now. We've seen a bunch of looting. Maybe you saw it before on some of the feeds. An art gallery was taken, a skateboard shop, some other stores, a lot of spray painting, but by and large,
Out of the area so that they can
have probably dispersed the crowd in Nicollet. What is she doing, dude? Will you guys stop hiding from me? Get back! Oh wait, you guys are crew. You guys are press. Sorry. Sorry. You can see the crowd. Some hostility on this side. You got the line running down Nicollet for the people. They don't want people to go back up. So they are making sure that no one tries to rush up. Again, this part over here. We have lots of crowd here. They are all rushing down Nicollet right now.
Yet seen. And then when
Moments ago, we did see there were still some people walking and milling about in the middle of the street. Right now, though, I'm just seeing police lights and a lot of quiet in our city.
A lot of quiet in our city. Not the case earlier, and we have this video queued up. We were talking about the gas being released, and Matt was describing how this was released even 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. I believe he was saying the fireworks were going off, and then we had Audrey Washington talk to us about how the fireworks almost seemed like they were on a timer, almost seemed like they were planned.
Trying to put that fire out. I thought it was coming from the Nordstroms, but it is adjacent to the Nordstroms in the middle of the Grove. The reason we were over at the Beverly, about a couple of dozen looters running out of the CVS right across from the Beverly Center along La Cienega. The group making their way all the way down Beverly Boulevard to Beverly and La Cienega, and then continuing back in the opposite direction towards the east. So I think it's notable that the group of upwards of 8,000 to 10,000 this morning really dispersed across not just the 3rd and Fairfax area, but as far west as the Beverly Center, and reports of hundreds of attempted looters near Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. So the all day does appear to be spreading, kind of a worst case nightmare here, at least for the west side, and you can see lots of debris in front of that Nordstrom's. It does look like they may have been able to access the Nordstrom's.
It appears like that might be a little kiosk of some sort of food kiosk that's on fire. one of those small coffee things or next to it. But yeah, it does look like those are boxes outside of the Nordstrom.
Yeah, it's a kiosk of some sort. I can't quite tell what it is. The initial impression I got is only because of
their anger and their protest.
Mayor Durkin, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. We want to go, and I will get right back to you. I appreciate your being with us. On the streets of Los Angeles, our Matt Gutman is seeing an attack on police cars, it looks like. Matt? Matt?
Just a few seconds ago, we saw protesters. I hear you, Terry. Just a few seconds ago, we saw protesters slam through the windows of this car. Something ignited inside, maybe a flashbang, unclear. Clearly, it's smoking up right now. Protesters seem to have backed off, but right behind them is a pretty strong, looks like phalanx of SWAT police with shields. They have some, well, looks like tear gas as well. But right now, the situation seems to have calmed down just a bit. But there's been a lot of this I'm going to duck this lady. There's been a lot of cat and mouse games throughout the day. Last night, hundreds of people arrested. We don't know about how many arrests today, but every single officer in the entire LA area has been dispatched here. Right now, people are just gathering close to take pictures, but it seems to have calmed down. Again, this is Rodeo Drive, the very symbol, one of them, of privilege in America. And you can see that police have closed it down on both ends. They've shut down this route also here that Santa Monica. They're trying to ensure that people don't vandalize the shops down there. Pretty much everywhere we've gone, folks have spray painted slogans on walls. We've seen some vandalism, some looting, not a tremendous amount. And of course, wherever there's opportunity they're moving in right now. They're protecting their vehicles. And that's over it. You can smell tear gas in the air. I guess what went off was tear gas. That little squad of SWAT officers trying to protect the vehicle, and I think they're going to shut this down at one point. We don't know where protesters are going. All we have heard is that they have been headed towards Rodeo Drive. They're now dispersing. Looks like back east. It's unclear, but right now, all these officers are moving in to try to protect these vehicles. So far, no one that we've seen has gotten hurt. Not many projectiles have been thrown. Police are trying not to be violent. We're going to get our cameraman out of the car, out of the way. And somebody here trying to make a statement by kneeling in front of police.
Back up, sir, please. Back up.
Terry, we're going to back out and try to assess the situation. Maybe take a little bit of shelter on the other side of the street. But we'll be back with you. We'll update you if we hear anything else or if anything
Merchandise. So we don't know.
Here. I wanted to mention, Mark and Ellen, that I witnessed firsthand at least 3 officers that have been injured that we saw firsthand injured in this, but I am told there are many more, at least a handful of others that have been hurt in this. Again, the line that they have here on a third here, they're continuing to push them to the east here. You can see a standoff continues between the protesters. And we're right by Pan Pacific Park, right where this started. You guys were talking about all the damage and vandalism that we're seeing. I have to tell you that the entire way that we've been marching here along 3rd, every single building is tagged. They're continuing with rubber bullets and other non-lethal rounds here. There you can see one of the canisters they just tossed out. Right there's a canister from one of that's the foam bullets that they're using to find the crowd. But as I was saying, every building from here that I've seen along the way has been completely tagged by all of the protesters. Have not noticed many smashed windows, as I said, but certainly a lot of damage from all of the tagging. Most of the frustration has been targeted towards anything having to do with the LAPD and the police. Almost, forgive me, almost a dozen police cruisers completely destroyed. One of them set on fire, nothing left, nothing but a shell left of that vehicle. All the other ones had their windows broken out, completely covered in graffiti, all of their tires slashed, those vehicles damaged, smashed in on the hoods. So they're continuing here to try to get them to clear out. You hear the police making the announcement, clear the area. Now here's what we're running into. You can see all these drivers. I don't know how many are also part of protesters, but a lot of these drivers are caught in the midst because they can't seem to get past all of the protesters in the street, and then they have the police marching up behind them. And if I were in one of those vehicles, that would be a pretty terrifying scene to be caught up in, especially if you wanted to get out of the way. I do know that some of the folks
live in the building. This is Kentucky right here, though. Memphis, Tennessee, actually. Oh yeah, good looking, Leo. Good looking, bro.
Boulevard, hundreds and hundreds of people right there at the intersection of Rodeo and Santa Monica. You can see Beverly Hills Police Department with riot gear on. Several of their cruisers have been tagged up, and you can see a group of them right there, again, trying to block any entrance now to the drive itself. But we did have reports of a number of people trying to break into the Gucci store and some other stores as well. We're not sure as to the degree of the success, whether they've been able to actually make their way in, but just near the bottom of your screen, you can see a number of these buildings along Rodeo Drive have been tagged with graffiti, so they did spend some time here and did do some degree of damage. As we come around, we'll try and look a little bit further south on Rodeo, Chad, and see if we can see any other activity south of Santa Monica Boulevard. You can see most of the activity does appear to be on the north side there. They appear to have emptied out Rodeo Drive, a long line of Beverly Hills police vehicles and the rest, but you can see the rest of Rodeo Drive, rather, is virtually empty.
Fuck Donald Trump and fuck the KKK. That's all I gotta say. You are choosing to support murderers and criminals. All types of people. People who are standing still and talking to you.
Pandemic. It just adds a dimension here, not only of the pent-up frustrations of everybody on all sides of this situation. Everybody's been on either lockdown or some sort of extra, or working extra hard or working from home or not working at all, facing whatever tensions they face. Then add in this situation and add in the fact that there'd be a spike in cases because of these demonstrations. There's enough people, a lot of them are doing this without masks, a lot of people obviously very close together. You just add that into this, it just makes it all even more difficult to deal with. And
Let me see if I can find that. So bear with me.
As long as we are never divided, we can make anything happen in this city. As long, I'm going to say it again.
Economy and people under a lot of stress. There's so much tension underlying. Besides this, people are already on edge. So, Chris, we are watching basically a standoff near Rodeo Drive. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so, you look at this group, and they don't appear to be exceptionally aggressive. They are clearly agitated, they're animated, but we know for sure that some of them have clearly vandalized this section of Beverly Hills. So within whatever legitimate protesters are left in this group, and again, they don't appear to be exceptionally aggressive. We don't see any violence taking place in this shot right here. What happened before this standoff transpired, we don't know, but we do know that there was some looting along Rodeo Drive. Clearly, Beverly Hills police, with much of their personnel on the corner of Rodeo Drive and Santa Monica Boulevard here, but as you mentioned, it's a fairly small police department. Surely they're probably calling more people in and clearly requesting mutual aid from the LA Police Department, and some of those officers may even be LA police officers. I'm not sure about that, but some of them may be. So you can see, if you look carefully, one of those Explorers clearly tagged up right there on the corner, and it looks like the windows may be either down or worse. Yeah, they were smashed. Those windows were smashed too. So a Beverly Hills police cruiser taking on some damage there. Obviously, things did take an ugly or violent turn a little bit earlier.
Absolutely. The people who are getting hurt by so much of this are some of the people who are originally victimized by the social issue that is being protested. Thank you very much to Mayor Melvin Carter of Minneapolis. Let's go to another mayor, Mayor Francis Suarez of Miami, where there are protests as well. Mayor Suarez, how is Miami looking tonight to you? What is the status of public safety, and what is the status of the protests?
Well, like Mayor Carter said, he's a good friend. It began as a peaceful protest in the city at about 3 p.m. We had about 800 to 1,000 protesters. We were extremely restrained. We actually allowed them to walk around our downtown, block traffic. They got on 95 for a little bit. We were escorting them, and we did not have any riot gear on. We were with essentially a bike patrol force that we had. Unfortunately, as what happened, unfortunately, at St. Paul,
the casings, and this is what we're seeing a lot of. This is what they're firing a bunch of the non-lethal rounds that they're saying. These litter the street here, these aluminum casings that have the black powder and the foam in them that they've been using. Again, you can see that they have really started to move back, but it doesn't appear that they're really dispersing. That's been the issue. I'm looking behind us, and I see...
smoke? Yeah, I think it's smoke.
I know what this one is. Pulse.
Pulse? Oh.
They killed George, obviously. Shit.
That's good.
They got gas right there.
Gas?
Or whatever, too, guys.
Sorry, guys.
What? I'm streaming. The riots. Right.
Thankfully, our police department, which is well led by our chief, exercised tremendous restraint. We had a great plan to give people the ability for them to protest with very few limitations. The only limitations being vandalism and looting. And once that line was crossed, we had to take some measures that were, relatively restrained as well.
All right. Mayor Francis Suarez of Miami, thank you. Good luck to you and to the people of Miami tonight.
Thank you so much.
We've been talking about national leadership, about President Trump. Twitter is the means in which he exercises so much of his leadership. He has just tweeted a minute or so ago, and this is what he said, the president. He said, the National Guard has been released in Minneapolis to do the job the Democrat mayor couldn't do. Should have been used 2 days ago, and there would not have been damage, and police headquarters would not have been taken over and ruined. Great job by the National Guard. No games! Exclamation point. That is the statement of the President of the United States.
encouraging them and pressuring them to get tougher on these protesters. And we know that the president has been sending mixed signals on this, right? And we also know that sources tell us that there is division within the White House among some of the president's closest allies and aides on just how to confront this issue and to confront the racial tension that we are seeing pour out across the country. On one hand, some of his close aides say that this is an opportunity for the president to show leadership, to get out and address the nation and try to unite the country. But on the other hand, some aides fear that one misstep, one wrong word could do more harm than good. And we have already seen how the president's mixed messages have sparked outrage. One thing that we do know, Terry, is that the president is watching closely tonight. He said,
even his squad mates knew. I wonder if they told you that when they beat you. I bet they did. I'm just letting you know. Now you can make a conscious decision.
I've talked to many who say they don't expect the president to change at this point. I think the only thing that will change this is the election in November. But that is what is different, I feel, in many ways from this protest, is that this is not just about George Floyd and not just about the incident in Minneapolis, but also, of course, about the man in the building here right behind me. Terry.
All right. Mary Bruce, out there on the streets outside of the White House, about a block away. Thank you very much for that. The president, has 80 million Twitter followers, has by the nature of the office.
Don't let them split us up. There is power in numbers. Go faster if you want to be
I said a couple of days ago that I think that the governor there failed miserably in the beginning by not having the National Guard pre-positioned after this murder occurred. You have to be ready. As a governor, you have to over-prepare in these kind of situations. And when it erupted in Minneapolis, as you had to expect that it would, people around the country who, remember, Terry, have been shut in now, for the most part, for anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks, frustrated by those shutdown orders, frustrated by what's going on in the country, frustrated by a level of unemployment that we see right now and the threats to their own livelihoods, now see something that's an injustice. And if you don't control it in the beginning, you're going to get this kind of reaction even worse that we're seeing across the country.
And Chris, I just want to ask you, you ran for president. This is a time for presidential leadership. Do you think we're getting it?
Well, listen, what I think is that, at this point, what I think we should be doing is to be trying to talk to people much more about how we need to see justice done here, and that justice will be done, and insisting that justice be done, and to counsel and plead, quite frankly, for the country to show patience. And I understand that for some who feel like this is long overdue, the patience will be tough to get. But I do think that as leaders now, what we need to be doing is saying two things. The first is that our justice system cannot let us down in this circumstance, and the Attorney General of the United States, I'm confident he will, needs to make sure that our system of justice is seen not only as fair but swift. because justice delayed here will be justice denied in many people's minds. The second thing we need to be saying to those who are taking advantage of this situation, to loot and to destroy property, is that won't be tolerated under any circumstances. So you need to be able to say both things, because there are a lot of people in this country right now who are looking for order to be restored. Again, Terry, I go back to where this started in Minnesota. The governor of Minnesota, I think, failed here in such a fundamentally miserable way that it ignited wood.
All right, Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, our colleague here at ABC News. Thank you very much for that. There is an open question as to whether or not this fire could have been stanched in Minneapolis, given the history. Finest. There is nobody better, but they must be allowed to do their job. This after saying that the National Guard and others must get tough, no games.
on this side of the fence. What the fuck are you doing? We love black people. Why are you freaking guilty for me? You are sworn to protect and serve. Think about it. Goddamn pussies. Let the bitch go. Take the gas mask off.
And I should say that we've been out here since about 6 p.m. on this Saturday night. Protests gathered earlier in downtown near Metro Hall, City Hall, and the courthouse and police headquarters. Protesters moved kind of in a loop around town, around downtown.
When you're an African American, and I hear from friends and colleagues, and you know of these things over and over again, not where police were responding to violent offenses, but when there are routine situations that end in death and or injury, that is where this all emanates, Terry.
Well put, Pierre. Thank you very much for that. And I think that the very image at the heart of this night of anguish and anger, the image of a white police officer with his knee on the neck of a black man, resulting in that man's death.
Back of the line.
There's like
gonna keep rolling.
Cop fire?
Yeah. Oh, you got, listen. But you know what? They handled it well. They did not F him up. They just like chased him down. I mean, I chased them, chasing him down the street.
All right, so right now, we got 25 minutes.
I know.
Where do you want to position yourself? Well, this is pretty chaotic. Stay with us, Chris. Next time, don't lose us.
I had to that time just because it was.
That America, where the rules are equal, where people are not treated like enemy combatants in their own neighborhoods, where people can feel not just safe from the police, but treated with dignity and respect across the board. We far too often talk about the systems that impact Black people in passive voice, and talk about the system and talk about Black people in active voice. We'll say things like Black communities are vulnerable, when in fact Black communities are not vulnerable. We've been under attack. We've been targeted. We've been harassed and mistreated. Vulnerability is a personal trait. And when you have systems that constantly collude to hurt and mistreat you, what do we expect people to do? The fact of the matter is we saw a CNN reporter get arrested on camera before the police officer who had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck was arrested, and the three other police officers who stood there are still out in the world.
is the BNC is what I'm talking about.
People are taking action with that.
So y'all peep how they got Washington D.C. and New York City is the same state. I mean, whichever one is which. One of them is the wrong state. Same footage. I think that's Washington. I might be wrong. Nah, that's NY for sure.
We've seen, some significant looting, a lot of graffiti outside. You can see what they did to the registers here, and I have my cameraman Lenny also come this way and avoid pitfalls and booby traps here. But they methodically went through each one of these electronic do-it-yourself registers to pop them open and see if they could get cash inside. So this, to me, seems a very opportunistic type of effort. Just now, you can see the caution tape's been brought in. Some sort of security. These guys are with security here. But what we've been seeing, we don't know what's going on down the street, but we are seeing people walking in our direction from over there with more goods. It looked like sort of stair equipment or some sort of appliances. Can't tell how widespread. What was it?
Matt?
There was a stabbing earlier? Yeah, so there's been some violence as well. Thank you very much. And so we're seeing, an increasing level of looting as the sun goes down here, Terry. Yep.
Yeah, and Matt, there's no question it's opportunistic. I don't know how many protesters bring tire irons and monkey wrenches to a protest. They were out for something else. But let me ask you, you've covered the
Fairfax, where there had to be at least 100 officers that were preparing to make an arrest. Looks like, let's go back to that, go back to the safe, because I have a feeling they're all running from there now, and they've been able to pry open the safe that I believe...
Oh, my goodness.
Or an ATM.
It's an ATM.
Oh, ATM.
It's an ATM.
It's coming out of that nail spa,
Well,
the nail salon.
Hopefully there's not a lot of cash in there since they haven't been in business for a while. And it would serve them right. I hope it's empty.
Yeah, good luck.
You know, some of these businesses have managed to board up, but obviously, you know, who would have expected this if you left your business a couple months ago? You know, this is the last thing you probably thought of.
Exactly. That guy took some chrome from the inside the store. He thinks that he's going to break an ATM with that?
Yeah, good. Yeah, look, I mean,
not the brightest
the
bulbs.
ATM's going to survive, but look at the business. The business is trashed. Nail salons
shattered.
Yeah.
That door was just glass, apparently. Look at that. Right. It is just a mess.
Yeah, they're just using hammers. They're taking those hammers. Here, look at these people in cars, too. Look at, I mean, these people in these minivans here are encouraging. Yeah, they're waving and encouraging all of this. So you have people driving into this protest. I have a hard time believing that many of these people are just driving through despite everything going on a Saturday afternoon, considering the state of affairs here. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So you have to wonder if people are now driving in from other parts of town to participate in this violence.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, you see, it's sad because you don't see any of these people with signs about George Floyd. They're obviously
well,
not.
this is.
They're just taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, this is obviously taking a turn that is much larger and far from George Floyd's cause and the tragic, senseless death in Minnesota. This is taking on a whole new life of its own, and these are not the protesters that were flooding Penn Pacific Park this morning.
No signs there. It's all people. These guys are just looting, and they're going to break through.
All right,
this,
we are going back to Matt Gutman, who is in another section of Los Angeles in West Hollywood. Matt?
Hey, Terry, pretty significant looting happening. You know, we talked about it earlier. We saw one store, then a couple more. That's a Target back there, and you can see them hauling out a big screen TV. Looks like a 65-inch TV. Someone behind them walking out with arms full of jeans. We've seen, you can see the hangers all over the floor here, over the ground. Shoe boxes. There's a Saks Fifth Avenue just down the street that has been busted open. People, yes, you can say something if you'd like.
Oh, hey, how you guys doing? What's up? So I was at the protest the whole and I stood in the front.
It's about not sending a message. That's what it is. No one's
I was in front and
make our own money.
I wanted to know
this
why.
is the streets of LA.
Watch out.
Remember, we're sending a message, baby.
There are many messages being sent right now. This woman, I'm going to give her a chance to talk. I'm going to give her a chance. But what we're going to do is throw back to Terry, and I'm going to talk to you off camera right now.
All right, Matt Gutman there. You feel the passion on the streets of Los Angeles and
in the mind of this country. People of all races, young, black, white, there's pretty much unison on the fact that that man should not have died that way, notwithstanding whatever prosecution will come. That we can see the country is in unison about. That said, we're also seeing how complicated this place we call America is. We are dealing with violence. We're dealing with indiscriminate acts of looting. We're dealing with all this tonight. And it strikes me that right now the country is looking for leadership. And I dare say it's a time for empathy, Terry, where people in every corner have to put themselves in the shoes of the other and think about how the police, many of whom do a great job every day, and then the people who have been discriminated against, made to feel like less than, who are now saying enough. That's where we are, Terry.
And that is where we are because of those issues which date back so long, really 400 years now. Pierre, thank you very much. I want to go to Byron Pitts once more, but I do want to say that the Associated Press has done a tally, and they say that 1,400 people have been arrested in 17 cities in protests over the past several days in America. And really, Byron, I just want to go to you. One of the ways of experiencing tonight is that this is a heartbreaking night for America.
Terry, you're absolutely right. It is heartbreaking. Good and decent people can agree and disagree about many things, but I think all good and decent people agree that lawlessness
Right here is good. So, because I just looked down the
Just
street.
south of Rosewood Avenue is where we are along Fairfax. This is one of the reasons it was taking a while to dispatch additional units over to Melrose, where the looting over there was taking place. But again, they didn't have the luxury over there. They don't have the luxury of boxing them in. This is actually a perfect scenario here where they really have nowhere to go unless they're able to escape or sneak through one of these alleys or between these buildings to get away. But they're basically in a position where they're going to have to give up to these officers as they close in on them.
It's an interesting tactic because there are quite a few people on the sidewalk as well, and you wonder how many people are hidden inside these shops.
Inside the stores, absolutely. We saw, we brought you this block maybe about an hour ago, and there were hundreds of people on this block participating in the looting and creating these fires.
Yeah, still seeing these fires popping up here and there. Have you seen any other police cars vandalized? Since this afternoon we saw so many of them.
I haven't. Once the fires start popping up, it's almost like.
Ooh, did you see a firework?
Yeah, there are some fireworks being thrown at the police officers on the north side, and here comes another group.
But this one was like a spectacular one, like a.
Where are they
4th
coming
of July
out of?
one.
They're coming out of an apartment complex.
Geez. Yeah,
So
that's
we're
a fire
on
hazard.
private property there. That's a residential neighborhood behind Fairfax Avenue. You're looking at the west side of Fairfax. Merchandise in their arms, and not sure what that car is doing. Yeah, it looks like he's just trying to get out of the way. They're running through the alley. Let's go ahead and chase them on the other side. Let's see where they go. They're running between the buildings. They're going to come out on Hayworth, which has been another hot spot throughout the afternoon. We'll see what they do. There's got to be about 20 or 30 looters that just ran between those two buildings with those tall trees there in between those buildings. They're either going to come out on Hayworth or they're going back into one of these. Those are apartment buildings, I believe.
And Chris, some of those looters might have popped out the back end of the stores.
Yeah, they're coming out the other side. They're
see
coming
them.
out on Hayworth. Yeah, they are. There they are. Now they are in a residential neighborhood on the west side of Fairfax with lots of merchandise, lots of shoe boxes, and other merchandise. Look at that.
I wonder if they were some of the ones that were boxed in and they got out the back of the store.
It's quite possible. Some of these buildings are attached, but others are not. They have a narrow gap in between. And that appears to be what they were able to do here. They found the gap and they ran through.
Huh. Wow.
Well,
go ahead. Let's go ahead and pan back over to the east side of Fairfax, across the street from Kenner's Deli, a little bit over to the left. Come down a little bit, right there. Yeah, top of your screen. Top of your screen looks like another store that was looted. Go up, right in there where that car's pulled up in front. There was somebody. Okay, yeah, they're all putting their hands up now, and they are boxed in. They're all going to be taken into custody. This is that group that has been boxed in right along Fairfax. Some able to get away, but the remaining looters here are on their knees, with most of them with their hands on their head, and
looks like some defiant ones.
It's going to take a little time, but they will be taken into and sneak out the back.
Wow. Well, this is an enforcement effort, a very vigorous effort at enforcement by the LAPD.
About 25 minutes.
In response to looting that has broken out in this area. The Melrose area of Los Angeles. Melrose goes between LA and West Hollywood. And what we're seeing here is some of these smaller stores being looted. There was a shoe store there. We want to talk, too, about what LA Mayor Eric Garcetti told us just a few minutes ago. He's called on Governor Gavin Newsom to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles. Some 500 National Guard troops will be on their way here. He told us it takes about 7 hours at minimum from the request to get here. So we're not sure exactly when they do get here, but they will be here. And what we're being told is that they'll be in kind of a support role. They will be there to support the police, and that they will help to try to restore.
And today, the mayor and police commissioner both promised to protect the right of protesters to protest but they did say if they hurt anyone else during these protests, if they cause physical damage to property, police will move in. They certainly did tonight. For now, reporting live north of Union Square, Dave Evans, Eyewitness News.
All right, Dave, thank you. And protesters set an NYPD SUV in Flatbush, Brooklyn on fire just about 2 hours ago. There you see it. Police have arrested at least 100 protesters so far today. Eyewitness News reporter Naveen Dhaliwal continues our coverage in Flatbush.
This protest about 2 blocks away, and there's a lot of police presence as things between police and protesters.
Union Square East, there's not much crowd to be seen in this shot. Earlier today, what you would see is a skirmish like that, and then a large crowd would sprint down the street in the other direction. This seems to be what is left of this crowd that's been lingering around Union Square from the evening on into the night.
All right, John, thank you. We know you will keep an eye out for us. We'll hear from you later. In the last hour, President Trump weighed in on the violence in our area. He tweeted, "Let New York's finest be New York, but they must be allowed to do their job." The violent protests weren't, of course, isolated to our area. We saw demonstrations across the country. At least a dozen cities are under curfew tonight. ABC's Karina Mitchell continues our coverage.
Once again, peaceful protest.
Looking at live pictures right now, these people are going to be under arrest, or they have to, I guess, mobilize. I think there's the bus behind that skirmish line, I believe. They have to get these people all in the handcuffs and there.
And that's part of the problem here, because remember, again, we talked about the coronavirus, COVID-19, that's an overlay of all of this. The jails, they can't just, they're trying to keep the population of the jails to a minimum because, of course, there have been cases in the LA County jails, in the different locations there. And so you can't just, they don't want to throw people in. Also, they don't want to have, basically, fill the jails with a bunch of people who are, they want to save those for the more violent criminals at this point. And unfortunately, if you arrest everybody that's involved here, they're going to, and take them into custody, that's going to fill the jails up really fast. And that is a burden on the police. It's a burden on the courts in the days and weeks to come after this. That's all part of this problem. So you overlay or think about the coronavirus component here, that also adds a level of difficulty and a level of, if you want to call it, reluctance on the part of law enforcement to really, arrest people. They'd much rather people disperse than they have to take them in, arrest them, book them, and put them into the system, because that is the resources of the city and county, which have already been strained by
that building right there on the left-hand side, and I think there are units on the other side of this building that are
still dealing with. And these are pictures from earlier.
What are we looking at on the right-hand side?
I'm sorry, Ellen, are you talking to me?
Okay, just some earlier footage. We're going to talk to Chris Christie right now. He's over the scene there.
Yeah, so they have begun the process, Ellen, of making those arrests one by one. It's a slow, methodical process. They've got their hand ties ready. They're basically lining up on the curb there.
there and going in, and it's just mayhem there, just boxes everywhere. And you know, Kathy and Gil, that's a metal gate. Those are usually brought down for safety. It's amazing that they were able to lift that the way that they did and get inside the store.
We weren't here for that, but it must have been a joint effort, a group effort to pull that up. You can see one person here holding up the gate for everybody else, another one here on this end.
Taking a picture, too,
Yeah, taking
at the
a
same
picture.
time.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, you know, they're doing the other people a favor, and then they switch and they go in and get their shoes.
Hey, Gil, what about the fires? You know, we've been tracking some of those. We saw the mayor said at least a dozen cars were LAPD cars were damaged. Some of them were burned. Any of those fires still?
See them moving now.
Are you filming us? Just the Washington Monument, really. Associated Press. Associated. Pretty unbiased. Unbiased? I grew up in Minnesota, man. George Floyd's from there, so it's close to home.
Okay. With, I mean, collector sneakers that you can't even imagine. Just incredible shoes, but they're disappearing tonight.
Was set on fire, and the people were looting the Nordstroms as that was burning. So it looks like some calm has been returned to the Grove, and I'm going to pan to the right here and show you one more scene. This is where the bus was being jumped on. I don't know if the bus has been pulled out of there. It looks like it has. That's 3rd and Fairfax. And then a large group that was assembled over here off of this street here. They're long gone. So the groups have splintered all over this area, the Fairfax district. A lot of them moved up Fairfax here where the looting is happening. A lot of them went off to the east. And at this point, the LAPD trying to do what they can, and it looks like they've moved a little bit further into the intersection or beyond the intersection back towards that Flight Club LA store. And let's take a look now that we've taken a little tour here to see if that was enough to scare the people away. They're keeping an eye on that skirmish line, but right now they're still going in and out.
You know, Gil, as we continue to look at your picture, we're going to bring in our investigative reporter, Eric Leonard. Eric, you've been talking with folks at the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department. They're on tactical alert, but even more than that, is right?
Yeah, the needs of the department have have grown exponentially in the last few days, as you can imagine. Not just the immediate needs of tonight, but the cascading effect of night after night after night of meeting hundreds of extra officers working a lot of overtime. Just the exhaustion level on the force is tremendous. So the department is getting a lot of help from the County Sheriff's Department. Beyond that, it sounds like assistance is coming in from other parts of the state, Ventura County, any other agencies that have officers to spare who can help manage all of this. And as we've seen in the Fairfax district in particular tonight, the complexity of trying to manage it. They've got a large crowd that most of which was...
It's a police car, right? Oh, shit. Y'all see? Can you see? Giving people an opportunity to leave on their own
And now that we have this curfew order that's taken effect, unlawful assembly announcements have been made in the crowd. All the components are in place now to begin making a lot more arrests than we've seen so far today, and I expect that's what's going to happen in the next hour. As more and more officers have been sent to the scene, as the management of this situation has improved, they're going to begin taking some action here. To your question, the LAPD not only calls a tactical alert, which means all officers on duty stay on duty until further notice, they also have activated pretty much everybody who wasn't regularly scheduled to work today, and they have activated all of the non-uniformed officers, detectives, who would typically be in an investigative.
شايف الحريقة اللي ورا؟
Bro, yo.
Oh my God.
I see several cars driving down and a group coming out of the other side of the park. Look on the right side, the east side of the park, another group of people. So they went running through the park, and you can see more people, more people coming out of the other side. So not sure. When we were here earlier, and I'm not sure if you were able to
regroup, give people some rest, and then return to the job that we expect and need them to do, which is running regular police patrols, handling radio calls in neighborhoods all over the city, something they're just unable to do simultaneously tonight.
And as you talk about that, it brings to mind what a coordinated effort it is, because as we said, we've heard from LAPD. Chief Michael Moore was called to be down there. He had a presence. We've heard from the sheriff and other agencies. They all have to work together to make this happen.
It's really difficult. All of the local departments have made years of contingency plans for all kinds of disasters. In fact, there's an entire arm of government in the city of Los Angeles that sits around. They don't really sit around, but they strategize and plan for any contingency you can possibly imagine. A lot of their work is on the big earthquake that everyone expects to happen. They make plans for wildfires. What happens if parts of the Santa Monica Mountains have to be evacuated? And they also plan for eventualities like this. And so nobody walks into this cold. There are plans on the books for who gets to be put in charge. How are people going to communicate? What radio frequency are we going to use? Which is the lead agency? Which agency is going to follow along? So they have a rough idea of how this is all going to work out. Tonight, in particular, we've heard from our contacts in law enforcement that as much of an expectation as there was that there was going to be a large demonstration in Pan Pacific Park right there next to the Grove, the preparations for that clearly were overwhelmed pretty quickly. And it just took law enforcement a while to catch up to that.
Eric, it begs the question, is it possible the
Quality starts within, you feel me? Brother, you feel me? Accept the bullshit. It's not that you need to tell y'all we did.
Chris, after what were 6.5 hours of mostly peaceful protests here around the White House, things have definitely taken a turn here. A line has been crossed. I'm standing at the corner of Connecticut and I, just about 2 blocks north of the White House, and you're looking at least one car set aflame here by protesters. I don't think you can probably make it out in a shot, but a lot of the windows here along Connecticut Avenue have been smashed as the businesses here, banks, restaurants, office buildings, and so forth. I think what we saw here tonight was protesters who were stymied in their attempts to get closer to the White House, closer to Lafayette Park, which was really locked down by Park Police, Secret Service, and others, spreading out into the downtown D.C. area, and with them has come more destruction here so far. Just within the last moments, D.C. Fire and EMS have gone on the scene, and they look to be getting this car fire under control. I'm obviously not in a position to get up and around the corner right now. You can probably see Metropolitan Police officers. That's the normal rank and file D.C. police. And basically locked off the rest of this street here, separating a crowd of perhaps 150, 200 protesters who could have broken off from what was the main larger group closer to the White House, separating them off from my street here, which is where the car is on fire. We saw at least one other vehicle.
There you go. Yep. That must be a...
And so that's gives you an indication of who's left on the street at this moment. People who were protesting have gone home. And what you've got left are people who are doing this. And this is a different, it's
arrested, and the LAPD had boxed them in, and we're just waiting for somebody to come in and take them away. So we'll try to get more information on that. And I believe as we continue to look at the scene here, we're going to hear from Robert Kovacic. Robert, you have an update or some breaking news on something?
We do have an update, Colleen. We now know that the National Guard is on its way. We can tell you that they will be here by midnight, and you can expect 1,000 members of the National Guard to be here in Los Angeles. This information coming to NBC4 from LA County Sheriff Villanueva. So now we know the National Guard has been requested. They will be here, and they will arrive at midnight. As Eric Leonard so aptly pointed out, this
And in many cases on a normal night, even a normal Saturday night, and if you see kind of a happy hour early town, this area would be completely empty. There are hundreds where I can see, and at times thousands of people surrounding Lafayette Park on the sort of the northern region. If you've ever been to D.C. and you've had your picture taken in front of the White House, you have walked through Lafayette Park. That's essentially a police zone now. It's fully controlled, and now you're seeing MPD officers clearing across Connecticut Avenue here, trying to clear out the protesters again who broke off from that main group and spread north. And you see them doing so now down I Street, which might give us an opportunity to move a little bit closer here as well. Good work. You want to come up here to the corner and see what we can see?
Did they spray something in my...
But again, that's what happened just a short while ago when the police, we guess the police did the tear gas and got everybody out of this park. And as you can see, they've now taken control of Santa Monica Boulevard here between Beverly and Rodeo as we're waiting to see what happens next. But again, as you said, there is a curfew that's already in effect. So I'm assuming that if they see anybody out here, they will be arrested or they're going to try to get them out of the area.
It will be interesting to see if they pop up somewhere else or what else is planned for tonight, or if they will listen to the curfew rules. Now it is a pretty widespread area that's under curfew. All of LA City, Pasadena, Glendale. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight.
Yeah, this could be a very long night because the thing is, when they get people to disperse, if you're talking about the people who are like the ones who are looting the store, for example, or the people who are setting the fires and causing the havoc, they disperse, they scatter, but they don't just go home at that point. They look for other targets, they're doing other stuff, especially when we talk about the people who are
So dangerous here. You look at one of those palm trees, when it catches on fire, you've got civilian vehicles underneath there. You've got some of the protesters. Gil, are you over the scene? Can you hear us?
I do hear you, Colleen, and we're looking at Melrose with the cross of Alta Vista, and there's some looting going on the north side of the street. So right down the street from where the officers were making arrests of those 4 or 5 suspects, here's some more activity on the north side of Melrose, just to the east of where those officers are. Sorry about the camera there, but we're going to get that shot for you one more time. The palm tree burning there, and that is continuing to burn without the fire department around. But here's another shop that is being looted. It looks like it's Alta Vio store there on Melrose, and they're going in and out and taking advantage of the situation there as well.
Okay, let's go to Eric Leonard, our investigative reporter, and he has such insight and some new information. Eric.
Yeah, Kathy, wanted to just button up a few other issues with the police response to this tonight. We've heard now have been injured. It doesn't sound like terribly seriously, but one of the injuries was considered far more serious than the others. They were treated around the scene, mostly for being struck with rocks, bottles, that sort of thing. Additionally, in the last 30 minutes, as police have begun to make more arrests, just like we were watching at that business a few minutes ago, one of the people they arrested was armed with a handgun. And we're told that that may have changed the way some of the officers are interacting with people they're taking into custody. They were certainly surprised to find a handgun in the middle of the protest, but that has definitely changed the nature of their interaction with some of the people that they're starting to pull away from the crowd and put in handcuffs. Lastly, last night, we know that the LAPD made over 500 arrests, most of those handled through citations where people were released the same night. It sounds like about 500 people were both cited and released. Only about 18 were held in custody. Those were the small minority who were booked on suspicion of more serious felonies. One of the concerns that the police department has expressed to us is that the people that were in custody were let go right away. The people who caused some of the trouble last night we saw in downtown LA were let go immediately, essentially because there is no bail for the types of violations that people were being held on. So they were out immediately, and they were worried that some of the same crowd that was causing trouble last night
it's all
might
over
be
the
part
city
of the
where they're
crowd
facing these standoffs with the protesters who continue to gather, who continue to be out there tonight despite the curfew that is going on. We have not seen them, any of the officers here, enforce curfew yet, but again, this just out and about, and that they don't see much. So I have not seen, it's hard to see as in the darkness here ahead of these officers, if there are any protesters ahead of them, but so far I haven't seen them really run into anything or any protesters at this part. But earlier we had seen a bit of a confrontation, but it appears most have left for the time being. So here comes some Here comes more officers moving in here. Literally running down the streets of LA here, clearing it out.
Quite a contrast.
And they've been at this all day. Yeah. It really is a big difference, a big change from earlier today, where we saw so many people out and about. But this has been fascinating to watch as they clear the streets here and have to just make sure that everyone's following through with the citywide curfew.
The booking procedure, they were being searched, they were being identified, and during that, a number of people were found with pocket knives. That's not terribly unusual. And as far as officers losing equipment, when you've got hundreds and hundreds of officers tussling with people in chaotic situations, all kinds of stuff falls off. We heard there was a two-way radio that was lost, handcuffs were lost, and yes, it does sound like a couple of them may have lost their batons, their PR-24 batons, not the collapsible batons that fold up and they carry on their duty belts.
Got it.
Oh, all right. Eric Leonard, thank you so much for all of your information. As we were just watching from News Chopper 4 Bravo, we saw all that looting at that watch shop. People, again, just as we saw at the shoe shop, going in and taking items away, just one after another, non-stop, and no one there to stop them as the curfew now in effect for all of LA, and yet we're seeing people on the street still at this hour, and a lot of stores being looted.
You know, Kathy, I just heard from Chuck Henry again, that store that was being looted, Altivo, A-L-T-I-V-O. He says it's a high-end watch store, which might explain why people are trying to get in and out of there. And it also had one of those metal gates that we saw at the shoe store. Somehow they were able to raise that, and you see people running out. Gil, is this another place
this
we're looking at?
This is a different place, Gil, right?
Yeah, yet another one, Kathy and Colleen. This is the Adidas store, 8,000 block of Melrose. So well to the west of that high-end watch shop that we were just watching. People coming in and out of what we understand is the Adidas store. And as we get closer, we'll get a better shot for you. But you see them coming in and out. The lights look like they're on, and or at least the frontage is. And you see people coming in and out there with a tighter shot as I zoom in. People just coming in and out. It looks like they busted through the front doors, or busted through the glass, I should say. You see the glass on the floor there, and people running to get shoes and other accessories out of that store. But again, it is the Adidas store, 8,000 block of Melrose. No police around at this point. The airship overhead is aware of it, but they have multiple sites here along Melrose that's being looted at this time.
Yeah, they've moved now from that high-end watch shop, and now they're going in here just as easy as can be. And we're just watching those advertisements, that picture of merchandise just moving as they make their way past it. There's no door left there at all. It is easy access. And they're also, it looks like, as you said, the gate is up. They're calling under that gate there on the right side. Yeah.
This has been a long day, and it promises to be an even longer evening. Let me just add this as well. LA Metro, we're just getting word, LA Metro is going to suspend all transit services tonight to resume at 5:30 on Sunday morning, tomorrow morning. They just sent us an email to let us know that. So, Robert, once again, you've been tracking some of the information just west of this area, Beverly Hills. What do you have? Do you have anything on the National Guard as well?
We can tell you that it's all quiet on the Western Front comparatively to, the Los Angeles. So here's what's going on right now in Beverly Hills. It appears that they are dispersing. There's pockets of trouble here and there. That's what they tell us right now. Just spoke with the city. Captain Ed Ramirez, who is the commander of the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department, says they did have problems earlier that protesters had surrounded the sheriff's station there at the intersection of San Vicente and Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. He said the problem with what happening right now in West Hollywood, as this curfew for West Hollywood and Beverly Hills is underway and has been underway since 8 o'clock, is that they have pockets of people who are now going, when I say pockets, maybe 2, maybe 3 people, going and vandalizing businesses there. So they have rolling patrols out in West Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, trying to stop the pockets of people that you see right now in the Fairfax district, but in smaller numbers. But it is going on now as you push west, and that is what they are trying to control. If you are home tonight, just to underline what Mayor Garcetti said earlier that he encourages you. You have to stay home. A curfew order isn't in place. Just stay home. Be vigilant. Don't get involved. Don't engage.
Is
As
that
you
a
see
TV?
That is a TV monitor.
A TV. Somebody's
being taken out of that store. You know, we've watched expensive shoes, expensive watches, and now this store. So you may be trying to figure out what plans are going to be in place for tomorrow. Well, the city of LA is already looking at tomorrow, and it looks like you may be spending more time at home than you realize. NBC4 has now learned that they are getting ready to shut down some key attractions. Griffith Park, we have now just been told, will be shut down tomorrow. As well as Runyon Canyon will be shut down tomorrow. No one is going to go there. All those gates will be locked for
Robert,
either of those places.
It's the irony of it all. We're getting, we're coming to this point of COVID-19 when things were starting to open and now shutting them down for a totally different reason.
Well, and of course, social distancing has gone out the window. The face masks have gone out the window. This is going to be something that we're probably going to be discussing in weeks after this. But right now, we have the National Guard, as we told you a short time ago, on its way to Los Angeles, 100,000 members of the National Guard. This is just one city in the nation. From people that I know across back east and down south are saying we're watching what is going on right now in Los Angeles. This has been a focal point for the nation right now with these locations that are so well known in so many places. The Grove, iconic. Fairfax District, home of Farmers Market, Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. And Kathy and Colleen, as we talked about for hours now, this was the purpose and the intention of many demonstrators throughout the day that said they wanted to hit these areas that are well known. And you can see the damage that's being done right now.
What is especially sad as you look at this street, if you're familiar with the Melrose area or the Fairfax area, these are not large chain stores. These are the mom and pop stores, the local businesses the mayor's been talking about for 6 weeks. They have been under those, restrictions because of COVID-19. All of a sudden, they get to open in the last week or so, and now this happens.
And as the mayor said of Beverly Hills and Mayor Garcetti, this was supposed to be a weekend where they were going to allow people back into stores, and they're going back in all right. You're looking at it right there. This was the weekend where people were going to have in-store shopping, some in-store dining, and now this is just the looting that is underway on the streets of Los Angeles and stretching in so many pockets of our city that, again, Beverly Hills has had to call for reinforcements from the Antelope Valley, from the sheriff's departments up there to come down and assist. Chief Villanueva of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department has had to ask for the National Guard to come in and help because our resources are eventually going to be tapped out, ladies. There's only going to be so many hours that they can be on their feet and trying to manage this situation because everywhere they turn, as we see right now in other cities, there's trouble in just about every block. It may not be large crowds of those protesters and demonstrators that we saw.
also understood that they didn't start the situation. The situation was started.
Unlawful. If you do not disperse, you will be subject to arrest. This assembly is unlawful. If you do not disperse, you will be subject to arrest. This assembly is unlawful. If you do not disperse, you will be subject to arrest. This assembly is unlawful.
You know, what is lost in all of this and what is so disheartening, what is lost is the message of what happened in Minneapolis earlier this week. The fact that 4 officers are now charged in a man's death. That is, people almost forget it when they see this sort of thing. They don't forget it, but the message right now is this. Gil, are there any officers around that you can see?
Let me try to look, and I haven't pulled away from the scene here. It's like a train wreck. You can't look away. I'm looking for those officers, and you really just don't see it happening.
Well, they wouldn't be in the middle of this street because there's so much traffic, right?
Yeah, I mean, you might see a blocking force over here at this intersection. That's Fairfax and Melrose, but nothing there as far as the police activity. I've seen the airship flying over, lighting up the scene, but just absolutely no police activity here. I think they're just stretched thin throughout the city.
We're also not seeing any large groups of people in this area. I don't know if you've seen any before. You've really been looking at fires and the looting that's going on. And this is that same store. We're back here at the Adidas shop, and they're going to clear the store out. I'm convinced that they will. There will be nothing left.
I believe so. I mean, it appears that the protest has turned into some looting, or the majority of it is turning into looting. We really haven't seen much as far as skirmish lines, at least on Melrose. We did see some to the east over by where that initial shop was, where they got those 5 individuals in custody. But at this end, the west end of Melrose, still no police activity.
You know, what about the police helicopter? I'm sorry, go ahead,
You know,
Colleen.
Kathy, as we watch this, I just want to let you know that Supervisor Hahn just released a statement urging calm, and I'm going to read this for the first time with you. It's a cold read, so bear with me. She released a statement saying, "I lived through the Watts riots in 1965. I lived through the 1992 uprising. I remember the pain this city and its residents went through. We should all be outraged by the killing of George Floyd. We must stand in solidarity against the deaths of unarmed Black."
I try to control my anger the best of my abilities, but I feel them. There's people that don't have the same mindset as me. My kind, you know what I'm saying? We grow up in poverty. It's fucked up out here. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Do you live in D.C.?
I do.
We need to leave.
All right. I do. I'm safe, man.
Listen, man. All right, you too. Take care. All right, Chris. We're having a couple of technical difficulties, and obviously the security situation is what it is, so I'm going to throw this back to you, and we're going to try to reestablish when we can, okay?
So essentially what we're dealing with is a situation.
This is Woodward Avenue, downtown Detroit. I'm Mandy Wright with the Detroit Free Press. People are crowded around the windows at Nike.
Humanity of Black people, and in the midst of yet another assault and reminder that we are seen as less than human, we're then being called on to rise above the situation. So the question I would have people answer for me as
tonight and that we watched earlier at the Nordstrom, at those shops there at the Grove, that's not the message that they had.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this out to you and Gil, and we're coming up on 9 o'clock here. It's 8:50, and so we're well into the curfew here. Does this almost seem like targeted hits? I mean, we've seen 2 high-end shoe stores. We've seen a watch store. This is not vandalism anymore. This is looting. So it almost seems like some of these folks know exactly where they're going.
I think the area definitely was targeted. They, people made that clear, and I think the names are recognizable. They're hitting stores. They know what's inside. Other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, Colleen, I think it's easy access along Melrose. So many shops, so many really nice high-end shops even that are along Melrose here, and it's just really easy pickings for the people to drive through. Here comes a fire truck engine coming through, and a paramedic. Let's see where they're going. They're heading off to the east. In fact, I'm going to come away from the Adidas store here and look back to the east where we saw the police earlier. We'll see if there was any activity with, we got the fire, some more fire trucks over here. And it looks like this is that fire that we were looking at earlier, that nail shop that was on fire.
Salon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you see how close by the looting is to this location, and those units are probably going there. But even further, there's some police there watching the fire department. And here, look at this, what looks like another structure maybe catching fire. We're going to move to the north side of the street. David, let's move to that side. We're going to go to the north side. It looks like that's another structure that's on fire.
Oh, that's a lot. It looks like it is, definitely. That is a big area right there that we're talking about, and that's probably where those extra resources were headed. We're going to try to find out what that is. We're seeing a lot of smoke. We're seeing flames.
Is that inside a building?
It is. The building's on fire. You see the smoke coming through the roof there. It hasn't, I don't know if it's burned through or not already. We were focused on the looting that was going on just a couple of streets over. You see a lot of people in the back running there. But this building definitely on fire. Let me see if we can get a name on the structure itself. But the LA City Fire Department, really busy along Melrose here. Just a block or two away was the nail salon. Here is this shop, but we're moving into a better spot for you. And I don't know if you were able to see the name on that.
No, I can't. It's a yellow sign. It looks like I can't make it out, but I'm wondering if it's more than one business.
It looks like it is, and here's a tighter shot for you if you can make it out. Doc Martens, okay. Mm-hmm. So it's a Doc Martens a shoe store maybe, but it's a quite a large building. As I come out, you see the smoke coming out of that structure, and we'll see what the fire department does. I'm going to try to listen to their frequencies to see if I can hear them chattering about that fire and how they're going to handle it, because there's still a lot of protesters here in the area and moving in and out of the stores. It's unknown how this fire started, but taking a look through the front here, and it's hard to tell if those stores were looted or if the fire department had to just make access themselves. They're making access inside. That's a good sign. They're going to fight it from the inside, at least for now. A lot of smoke being vented out through the roof.
And it looks like a different business, possibly. I don't know. I can't tell. I just see different signs there. It's really hard to tell what's going on there or what the business might be.
And Kathy and Gil, as I look at this, all those stores are connected there.
They're
I mean,
close,
you're talking about something that runs a city block almost. And if this fire gets in the roof, correct me if I'm wrong, typically it runs through the attic. It could take out an entire block.
It could. In fact, it may have already spread to the other buildings. It's hard to tell. There is quite a bit of smoke coming out of it, out the front and out the vents on the roof. So it's hard to say if it's skipped over into the other businesses there. It's blocked by smoke to the east there. You see that stretch of businesses there are really blocked. You can see some of the signs there where fire has not gotten to that yet. But this is a concern definitely for the firefighters and certainly for the police to get in this area and try to bring an end to this looting that's going on, because this could be a result of such a activity.
Yeah, it could be vandalism. It could be we don't know right now at this point. But they were still working on that fire at that nail place just down the street. And you ran down and went over to this area, and now we see that this is on fire. It's just crazy. We're just coming up at 9 o'clock now. We're going to be with you for 1 hour, and we're seeing looting and
You know,
yeah, that's right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we're having community leaders weighing in on this all day. We just heard from Karen Bass. She's a U.S. representative. She's a prominent African-American politician. She represents the Culver City, South L.A. area. She says tonight, if you're mad, if you're distraught, if you're angry, if you're hurting, fight back against the system that killed George Floyd. Do not destroy our communities and our neighborhoods.
Yeah, the sad part about destroying the neighborhood is that it takes forever to recover.
To rebuild.
Yeah, these are businesses.
Again and again and again.
You know, one thing that I have found frustrating is, you know, we do a story like this, or we do a story about somebody who has died in police custody, and inevitably, especially on social media, you'll have the people who will comment saying that, you know, this person was resisting arrest, he got what he deserved. This person ran from the police, he got what he deserved. This person, whatever it is, they got what they deserved. And for one thing, you know, the video, everything supports the
any further westbound. They're going on the streets northbound there. But look at how much smoke is pouring out of this fire. It's unbelievable. There might be more structures there that are on fire. It's hard to say it from this angle.
Yeah, and we can't see signs at this point. All we know is that, like Colleen was saying, all of these businesses are kind of next door to each other, so it could easily spread from one business to another. But they're focused right on this area where we're not seeing flames, but we're seeing a huge amount of smoke coming out.
You know, as we continue to watch the picture here, I want to bring in a friend of ours, Errol Southers. Errol, are you with us? Errol Southers?
This is Tim Williams.
Oh, Tim. Hi, how are you? It's Colleen Williams. I remember you from the other night. You used to be with the LAPD, correct?
That's correct.
All
That
right.
is correct.
So as you look at this, and we're coming up on 9 o'clock here. So what's the playbook for the LAPD at this point? I mean, you've got this fire, raging fire in the middle of Melrose here. You've got looters out there. What do you tell your people if you're commanding the LAPD?
Well, the thing is, you know, Michael Moore, came on the air a little bit earlier, and they mobilized their entire department the first time since the riots about 20 years ago. And this is, you know, you try to prioritize the locations you have. Here you have buildings being burned, and he's trying to, you know, they have made some arrests, they have cornered some looters, and they are trying to, you know, quell the fire, save property, and at the same time,
public policies, and how that allows for the neglect of black and brown neighborhoods of color, how it reinforces poverty and the oppressive conditions.
Background in law enforcement, how do you enforce the curfew at the same time?
Well, that's $1,000 question. You know, the thing is that the curfew has been set. It's from I believe it's from 8:30 to 8:30 to 5:30 in the morning, and if people have been notified, if they are violating the curfew, then you affect their arrests. And the thing, you get the individuals off the street so that you can take back the streets and do what needs to be done. It's a handful. He's trying to maintain the entire city with 9,000 police officers. You don't have 9,000 police officers out there at the same time. They work 12-hour shifts. So you have 4,500 out there at one time, and then they're relieved, and another 4,500 go out.
Tim, 30 years with the LAPD. I suspect you were here in 1992.
I was.
What would you tell the people who are on the front line right now, given your experience?
Well, the thing is that I've seen what has been done, and there is more of an organized approach now than it was back in 1992. I was there at the genesis of it, and it was not well organized. We
on
weren't.
the motorcycle. He was next to it, and it's not clear if he took a direct hit or if he got hit because it ricocheted. But we did speak earlier with an Atlanta police spokesperson at Grady Hospital, where that officer is right now, to get an update. Here's what he had to say.
So around 10:30 this evening, we had an officer that was struck by an ATV on Marietta Street near the intersection of Spring Street, or at the intersection of Spring Street. The preliminary investigation indicates that the officer was stationed there at that intersection. He was blocking traffic from continuing down Marietta Street into an area where protesters were present. While he was there, he was standing near his motorcycle. He was not on the motorcycle. He was standing near his motorcycle. An ATV came past one time. At some point it turned around and it came back past, or was attempting to come back past again at a high rate of speed, and it struck the officer while he stood there on foot. The officer has been taken to the hospital. He was transported by a Georgia Army National Guard vehicle that was nearby. He is in stable condition here with significant injuries to his legs. The rider of the ATV was located on scene, taken into custody. He has been transported here to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. At this point, we're looking into what led up to this accident, what caused it, and that investigation is current and continuing right now.
Significant leg injuries.
On the street, and they were boxed off between lines on either end of the street, and without, from what I saw, without any undue excessive force, and that's a coordination of effort. That's training, and that's what training looks like.
And I'm glad you brought up the excessive force, because we were also talking about how do officers handle things being thrown at them? I mean, they were tossing gas bombs into the
M80s
crowd,
as well, Kathy.
and they're throwing them back. And you've got people yelling at you. How do they deal with that and not get agitated and escalate the situation?
Well, you're trained to de-escalate. You're trained to when you put yourselves in these situations, you're going to have these type of situations. You're trained not to respond to the pockets of things that are coming at you, but to respond to directions and commands of the squad leadership and to effect.
To say, I'm not going to speculate as to what they will be, but we do have him in custody. It's just kind of early on for that.
But alert and conscious when he was brought here to the hospital.
I believe so. I've heard reports that he was inside and actually was talking with fellow officers.
So was that street blocked off?
Of some factions that are out there. And this is not only with Los Angeles, but all across the country. I've seen folk that you would not normally see leading or leading in this insurrection. I call it insurrections, and it's there's more than going on. There's more behind the scenes that needs to be looked at than what you see going on here. So seems like to be an orchestrated. It seems to me, and I've been in this business going on 46, past 46 years, going on 47, across the country, and that's bothersome.
One person arrested tonight was found to have a handgun. How does that change the picture for officers on the street?
Well, when you're out there, you don't know who's who and what's what. You don't know what people are having. You just pray that you can get, you can effect arrests. You can keep the peace without anyone getting hurt and the officers not getting hurt. When you have this, you don't know what you're going to find when you arrest people. So the thing is that it's an issue of training. It's an issue of coordination of resources, and that's what's important.
And are
and
you
that's
trained?
What you have seen.
Are you trained to read the crowd, to read what they might do next? How much of that goes into play?
Well, you pay attention to what's going on out there. You have your squad leaders paying attention, and they're getting directions from other higher ups in the command to certain concerns and certain issues that need to be addressed right away. If you see some folk that are armed, you bring the proper resources in. When I say proper resources, folk like SWAT and things of that nature, people who have training in that type of for those type of environments. But again, you assess the situation, you respond, you don't let the situation control you, you control the situation.
And Tim, we heard from the mayor today as many as 500 people were arrested last night. Most of them got citations. Only a handful were kept in jail. Most got citations and were kicked loose today. And do you have any doubt that they're back out there on the street? And does that bother you?
Oh, that's these are citable offenses. These hopefully, it's like, again, you can pack the jails out until you can't have no more room anymore. But you cite them, and if they're out there again, then that citable offense may not be a citable offense. It may be a booking offense because obviously the site didn't work. And you go from there. But the thing is that you make sound judgments. You put them. You make their arrests. You cite them out, and they'll have their day in court. And at some point in time, when the courts open up after the pandemic and after what's going on within all the cities across the country.
Well, you have a lot of experience, and you've been through similar things before. How confident are you that we will have any control by 5:30 in the morning?
Well, it ebbs and flows. You get people, it's like anything else. People get tired and they go home. And then you see them congregating again in late morning, early afternoon, and into the evening. And so the thing is that, as you deal with this thing on a day in, a day out basis, hopefully you want to deal with it too much longer. But as long as you're dealing with it and you gain the resources that you need, identify the leadership or the agitators that are there, deal with that, then you gain ground. You want to gain ground, from day to day, and making sure that businesses aren't destroyed, making sure communities aren't destroyed, and those who are doing it get detained and arrested.
Tim, when we spoke on Wednesday, that's when the group had moved up on the 101 freeway, just shy of Alameda there. They took over both sides of the freeway, and they had some problems with CHP officers. They moved in on the cars. Somebody broke out the back window with a skateboard. Another one was a piece of board. How problematic is that for officers in looking at video a couple days down the road and trying to track these folks?
Well, that's a problem. We're supposed to be doing to the pandemic. We're supposed to be wearing masks, but we're not supposed to be out there tearing up our environment. I believe in peaceful demonstrations, but I don't believe in tearing up, your environment where you have to live and shop and eat. You do the best you can. There may be some cameras where individuals were caught prior to putting on their masks. You could identify them by clothing they're wearing and so on and so forth. And you may be able to get some identification from there. But it's a totality of everything. You have to see the genesis of where the demonstration started and where they got onto the freeway, and then you go from there. And it's an investigative process.
And you were working in 1992 when you saw the looting and the fires and businesses destroyed. How does it affect you seeing this tonight on a different level? Of course, a different situation, not the same thing, but how does it affect you emotionally?
Well, the thing is that the incident with George Ferguson, George Floyd, I'm sorry, that whole situation bothered me. I've seen a lot during my career, and seeing this was at the top of egregiousness. So that bothered me. To the point where the entire nation was bothered by that. You even had chiefs of police come out, and which is a total rarity in my experience and in my career, coming out criticizing the action of a police officer to the point where they suggest that he be arrested. So the thing is that it's not a new phenomenon, but it is a phenomenon that's caused the consternation of the whole nation on the heels of people being sequestered for almost a month and a half or 2 months on this COVID-19 issue. And then you look at the leadership in our government and everywhere and everything else, and it has a cascading effect. And what we see is, I'm very concerned. Not only do we have the pandemic, but now we have a country that is the infrastructure of the country is dwindling because of what we're seeing here.
Tim, we're looking at a picture right now. I hate to interrupt you, but I want you to walk us through it. This is at Pico and La Brea, I believe. This is a Target store. There were reports of looting here. You see a line of officers outside. What's the protocol on this?
I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. Go ahead. What's your question?
So what's the protocol here? They just rolled up on scene, and will they wait for the looters to come out? Will they go into the store? What do you do at this point?
Well, if you notice that they are getting in formation in certain areas of egress and ingress, and they will be taking directions from the command staff as to what to do.
It looks like they arrested someone at the top of the screen there.
I see that there. And these individuals may have been on the outside or coming out of the store, and they're being ushered over to the arrest team where people are designated to arrest individuals. Now, everyone has a job to do. One individual, maybe one group apprehends them and they take them over to another group of officers whose job is to arrest.
Well, Tim, we certainly thank you for your expertise. Tim Williams, LAPD officer for over 30 years and military veteran as well. Hopefully we will not have to speak with you again this evening, but
well, if you
it's
need
possible
to, you have
we
my
will.
number.
All right, we certainly do.
All right.
Tim, thank you again. We want to bring
You're
in.
quite welcome.
All right, we want to bring in Megan Reyes right now. She's in News Chopper 4 Alpha. This is that building that was on fire just a couple of minutes ago. Megan, it looks like it's fully engulfed at this point.
Fully engulfed, fire through the roof right now. You can see the challenge that firefighters have right now. They are concentrating and trying to save the buildings next to it. They're probably going to go into what they call a defensive mode right now. This is a Starbucks right here to the right of it. To the left of it, we have a lot of other small businesses. So fire department's definitely going to try to save some of these buildings, but you could see the challenges that they have ahead of them. This is the 7500 block of Melrose Avenue. Started as a small fire. Took firefighters a while to get there. LAPD wanted to make sure they could secure the scene, and right now this is what happens. You have good intentions from earlier today. You had peaceful protests, and unfortunately now we see a situation like this. You could see the fire just blazing through that roof right now. Very intense situation here.
It really did just explode. We were watching it earlier, a lot of smoke, and now we're seeing a lot of flame coming out of that. And Megan, you brought up a good point, because the firefighters can't just roll up on the scene and start taking care of this. They have to first go with the police, and they have to rope off the area, make sure it's safe. So that's one level of work they have to do, and it just takes more time for them to get there. That could have caused this fire to spread even more. And the other thing I'm thinking is there are businesses on either side.
Right, and that's what they may end up doing, is going in what they call a defensive mode. But hopefully there's a firewall in these buildings here to protect the adjacent buildings here. So you have a couple of buildings here that's in the path of the fire. Fire department's going to do everything they can. And, you know, resources are really stretched. Kathy, in News Chopper 4 Alpha, we were over downtown Los Angeles. We saw multiple rubbish fires. They have their hands full in downtown LA with a bunch of looting areas near 7th and Main and Broadway. So there's a lot of activity there. They do have multiple small rubbish fires. People are lighting trash cans on fires in downtown, but nothing of this magnitude. You can see the intensity of this fire. It is just consuming this entire building. Firefighters, looks like they may even have to pull back here because of those intense flames right now.
Makes you wonder what is fueling this fire.
You know, I was just thinking the same thing. I don't know what's in this building here. I heard there was a couple of small businesses here.
Tony K Shoe Store, I believe, is what, there you see on the outside, Tony K Shoe Store.
Yeah, so if you got a shoe store there, you can imagine all the products in there, all the cardboard boxes and everything that is fueling that fire that is just really rapidly consuming this building, and the buildings next to it. The radiant heat is what's going to be an issue there. The fire definitely may start with these buildings just because they're so close together right now. So firefighters are still battling this right now. This is, again, the 7500 block of Melrose here as they are dealing with this fire. One of many fires here erupting here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we saw the nail salon or nail shop that was on fire earlier. They were still about 30 or 40 minutes ago. I don't know what the situation is now, but now we're seeing this fire here at the shoe shop. This is the largest fire, I think, that we have seen tonight, other than the little spot fires. And of course, earlier, several patrol cars, LAPD patrol cars were set ablaze as well. So the fire department has been busy taking care of a lot of those fires. But this one just huge, as we're seeing plumes of smoke and that huge fireball right there in the middle of the store, which we believe, if we're looking at the sign, is some type of a shoe store there on Melrose.
Yeah, that's right. And Kathy, I just also want to add, you know, I look out the everywhere. I'm seeing law enforcement responding with their lights and sirens. So they are just going to multiple areas. They're hearing about looting. They're hearing about small rubbish fires. So it is just a chaotic situation. And just moments ago, somebody pointed a green laser at the helicopters as well. And, you know, you have law enforcement helicopters up here trying to direct officers down below into a safe direction to try to disperse some of these crowds. And now they have to worry about somebody with the laser shooting at the helicopters. That can be a very dangerous situation, not only for the police, but also for the media helicopters here as well.
Absolutely. On a normal night, Megan, we would be covering that as an entire story. It's illegal and very dangerous, as you said. That could be a story for us, and yet it's just part of the scenario we're seeing, where we are seeing looting, outright looting, just people smashing windows and taking items out of the store, and we're seeing fires set in various areas. We've had officers injured as well. I've seen some protesters earlier in the day who were down in the street because we kept seeing people running, and of course you're going to have injuries. So really, it's just been an incredible afternoon into the evening. And now, as we are approaching 9:30, we are well into the curfew that was put into place at 8 o'clock. And now we have word that the National Guard will arrive at midnight. 100 National Guardsmen being deployed to this area. What we heard from our investigative reporter, Eric Leonard, was that they would help just to take up some of the slack right now, because we have these officers on 12-hour shifts. And Colleen, you've been here at night covering some of these demonstrations. They are taxed.
Well, it's interesting because they typically ratchet up at night, and the National Guard is going to be here to provide force protection and security. That, of course, according to the sheriff. Now, I want to ask Megan, because you've just flown through the area, you had to put down to refuel, and then you turned around and came right back. So you've got a broader picture of more than just this fire right now. What did you see on your way in? Are there still protesters out there? Are there more fires out there? What can you tell us?
Colleen, right now it's hard to see the protesters unless if we're exactly over the area because it's nightfall, but they are out there. I'm listening to LAPD, and it's really getting busy in downtown Los Angeles with looting. We did hear about an officer who was injured near Spring and 7th. Somebody threw a rock, possibly a broken wrist, according to the scanner traffic. So what I'm seeing is just a lot more commotion. And as I said, as I look out the window in every direction, 360 degrees here, I'm seeing police officers with their lights and sirens responding to multiple calls. We do see a lot of smoke in the air from earlier fires. We did see a couple of fires in downtown Los Angeles. This one here on Melrose Avenue. This is the biggest fire we have yet to see. It's a very unfortunate circumstances. What started off as a peaceful protest in Pan Pacific Park today, people were out there protesting, and unfortunately a few individuals just took it to this level, and this is why there is a mandatory curfew. But unfortunately we're just seeing a lot of mayhem down below. And again, as Kathy said, it normally would be a story we would focus on, getting lasered by an individual. The green laser lit up the helicopter here in News Chopper 4 Alpha. That is pretty bright. Great job here by our pilot Derek Bell, just maintaining the stability of this helicopter. But that's just we're just seeing a lot of pandemonium and a lot of chaos below. And those police helicopters, they are relaying information down to the officers below. They want to make sure those officers are safe. So when people have those lasers and they're pointing them at the helicopters, that's a very dangerous situation there for the pilots as well as for the media helicopters. So we're all in this together right now. They're trying to make sure those firefighters are safe there. No, we don't see any immediate crowd here. So fortunately, these firefighters can concentrate on this building right now as we're watching. It looks like they are starting to get a little bit of an upper hand. We still see a lot of fire on the roof, but the good news, it's not spreading to any of these local businesses right next to it.
It looks like they've really confined it so that the rest of the businesses, and as we said earlier, these are all connected. This is almost an entire city block. You've got the Starbucks on one side, you've got the shoe store, and then you that we're looking so forward, I'm sure, to opening and getting back to some sense of normalcy here, and then all of a sudden this happened. Megan, we're going to continue to look at your picture here. We're going to bring in Eric Leonard once again, who's been talking with people at the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department. Eric.
Good evening. The word that we're getting from department commanders is that they feel like they've made some significant
result of that, in that people are losing their businesses as a result of that, and some people have been injured. We know of police officers who've been injured. We do not yet know of any civilians who have been injured, but we know a number of arrests have been made, and there will continue to be. We've got a citywide curfew in the city of Los Angeles, and also a number of other cities: Pasadena, Santa Monica, and let's see what else. Several other cities that have. Culver City is one of them that have a curfew that began at 8 o'clock and will end at 5:30 in the morning. City metro buses, county MTA buses will not be running. They have stopped running. One bus was trashed earlier in the day, completely destroyed. And so for the safety of the riders and the drivers, all MTA buses have stopped running, and this can put some people in a real tough situation, because so many people depend on that. And if somebody was out during the day and then suddenly finds himself with no way to get home, they're kind of stuck. So I would imagine there are more than a few people who are in pretty dire straits with regard to the need for transportation tonight. That young lady that Leanne Suter interviewed a few minutes ago talked about angels, she called them, who are out on the streets right now, who are giving people rides, who are helping people to get home and to avoid the curfew. So those folks are out. And aside from the angels, there are others out who would be much less than that, who would be considered quite different from that, who are causing this wanton destruction. Well, we've got Chris Christie. He's in Air 7 HD, one of our reporters who's been dealing with this all day and all evening, as we all have. I'm feeling some of the weariness, frankly, that we could hear in the voice of the mayor, Eric Garcetti, earlier when he was on the air with us, talking about how the National Guard has been called, how it is time to unify and time for everybody to go home and stay there, and how disappointed he is in the fact that this was going to be a weekend of reopening in the city of Los Angeles. These restaurants that are now, of course, closed, this would have been a night where they could have been open, and people were getting back to business.
PD officers who've had to do things like traffic control, controlling crowds and intersections. Not so much of the hands-on police work that we're seeing officers carry out right now, much more in a supportive role. That may change. That may evolve over several days, but it is certainly not the initial intention to have National Guard troops step in and take the place of LAPD officers in most conventional policing jobs. The National Guard was called in back in 1992 to help the city manage the unrest, and there were, when the incidents and the planning and the events were all looked at days and weeks later, it was clear that the National Guard then was not well prepared to do the kinds of things that the LAPD really needed assistance with. That's changed. There have been many more recent discussions about how to integrate the military, National Guard in a catastrophic type incident. This is not the type of incident that was being considered when those discussions happened. It was far more along the lines of natural disaster planning. But nonetheless, there are working plans in order for this to happen. Again, it sounds like the National Guard is going to be in a mostly supportive role, at least in the first hours. But given how everything has changed so quickly today, how the department has clearly been overwhelmed and has now been pushed to its limits, there's a good chance that that role could evolve in the coming days as well.
I remember it well, and even in a supportive role, what you see are men in uniforms on the streets of LA. And at that time, if I remember correctly, they were helping to protect firefighters who, like this situation, were sort of moving from spot to spot trying to put out fires.
There were terrible tragedies in the 1992 riots involving firefighters. There were, if memory serves me, firefighters were struck by gunfire trying to protect blocks that had caught fire, and fires were going to catastrophically spread from home to home, business to business, and it was a real desperate situation. That caused quite a bit of reluctance on the part of firefighters, who see themselves as far less polarizing than the police force when they get sent into a neighborhood, and yet they were still being met with the kind of response that the police department was seeing. That was then. Plans have changed now. You've seen all night tonight groups of police officers who've been sent along to escort the firefighters so they don't have to watch their backs when they're trying to do their core job, whether that's saving somebody's life, helping somebody who's been injured, or putting out fires like this. It doesn't sound like that is a role the National Guard might play right away, but again, everything is changing hour by hour here. When we first spoke today, I think it was around 3 o'clock, there were plans in place for the LAPD to sweep through the crowd and arrest potentially 300 or 400 demonstrators in the Fairfax district. By the time the words were written on a dry erase board, plans were out the window. Things had changed so quickly that became an impossibility. And now we've seen the result of that not happening hours and hours and hours ago. So there's no telling where the National Guard troops will be sent in the coming days. But again, at first, it sounds like it's going to be a supportive role, traffic control, crowd control, that sort of thing.
What we're seeing tonight is that the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department are really having to split resources here. What can you tell us about what's going on downtown?
Yeah, it's another complicating factor, as if the issues in the Fairfax district weren't taxing enough to both departments. Because remember, the LA County Sheriff's Department is responsible for the West Hollywood area, which is directly north, just across the street in some cases, from where the issues have been going on in the city of LA's district. That's drawn quite a bit of attention. Downtown LA, the LAPD was for a time earlier this evening really relying on a lot of help from the California Highway Patrol, particularly when some demonstrators began to walk into freeway lanes. They were determined to not let that happen because people wandering around on the freeways creates a safety issue that is magnitudes more difficult than walking in surface streets. So the LAPD, again, relied on outside help to assist them, to take care of that. Downtown LA sounds like it's experiencing its pockets of unrest as well. It sounds like with hours into this, as needs have become clearer in specific places, the department is much better able now to manage where they're sending people than they were 3 or 4 hours ago. But again, it sounds like the department is relying on outside help as well to deal with whatever comes up.
You know, we've been talking about the protesters and the looters, two separate groups here. Does it appear to officers you've spoken with that these looters are really an organized group targeting certain areas? I mean, they've hit a couple of high-end shoe stores. They've hit a watch store. We saw some of them being arrested outside a Target. Is it a what's the word I'm looking for? An organized effort here.
I can tell you that prior to tonight's events, the officials that we're in contact with did not have indications that there was a plan or discussions amongst people who were on their way out deliberately to do harm to the community tonight to begin looting. It appears on the surface that much of this are opportunities that have come up. Empty blocks, businesses with windows smashed out already, and crowds that are being pushed in one particular direction or another by the lines of police officers that are trying to send the protesters on their way, send them home. The last thing they want to do, by the way, is arrest anybody. That creates a huge bureaucratic backlog, and it takes more and more time away from patrolling the streets and preventing things from happening in the first place. So the more protesters that can be encouraged just to leave on their own and go home, the better. One consequence of that is when they're all pushed in one particular direction, as we've seen tonight, some of the businesses that are on that route of exit seem to have become targets of opportunity. No indication from anyone monitoring particular social media or even some undercover officers that have been wandering through the crowds tonight that there was any sort of planned effort, much more so that an opportunity was seen. And with the advent of cell phones, it's very easy to coordinate efforts amongst 3 or 4 people, maybe unlike 30 years ago. So things may appear that there's more coordination. Doesn't sound like there was anything planned specifically in advance.
Definitely a crime of opportunity. Eric, we're going to let you get back to contacting some of your sources here as we continue to look at this area in the 7500 block of Melrose. We're going to bring in our friend Errol Southers. He is a professor at USC. He was with the FBI, local law enforcement. Errol, your list of accomplishments is too long for the hour we're on the air here, but let me just say welcome. He's also a terrorism.
drove past it on the way there. There's the full on down there.
I believe that is in the Hollywood area, if I'm not mistaken. Chris Christie overhead, what have you got?
I'm with you, Mark. I think this might be unrelated, but what it appears to be was a group of fire trucks being escorted by LAPD units, perhaps for their own protection, but quite frankly, the call very well may just be for your average kitchen fire. We just don't have any idea, but for safety reasons, they are escorting the fire department through town this evening because, as you mentioned, they are getting regular 911 calls on top of all of the other chaos that's transpiring. We're at Beverly Boulevard and Kings Road. Again, lots of units here responding to some call, some 911 call most likely, and we're right down the block from the Beverly Center, which has seen an increased police presence as well. I don't have any confirmed looting at the Beverly Center, but certainly they are keeping an eye on that as well.
And we are looking to see about any type of protesters that are happening in downtown Los Angeles. I was looking on Twitter, and of course that curfew is in effect at 8 o'clock, so it's been in effect for an hour and 34 minutes. We're going to go to Leanne Suter. She has been down on the Fairfax district. And how's it looking there, Leanne? Is it getting a little quieter?
They're starting to clear out a little bit, but let me show you the looting is continuing at this one store. We've just watched them. They're literally lined up and going in and clearing out. I haven't walked down yet to see, but I believe it is a shoe store. It has to be emptied by now. I mean, we just see people like literally they're going in one at a time, everybody getting what they want and heading out, but they keep going inside this one business here and cleaning out anything that they see inside of that one. As I said, all along Fairfax here at Rosewood, there are numerous businesses that have been vandalized and everything inside taken out. But this one in particular, it's very popular, it appears. Lots of folks just waiting to get in and out of that one. And then I haven't seen where everybody's moving from here. We saw them moving north. I haven't heard of anything else yet in this area, but the damage here along this stretch has been done. I mean, there's just numerous businesses, the windows shattered, the gates are actually ripped off from their railings and whatnot as everybody broke in. But you can see, if you can make it out, I mean, we can see that they're lined up. It appears somebody's kind of even in charge of who's going in and out and how often, how many going in and out. And so that is interesting.
Imagine that.
Someone just pulling up here. Yeah, blocking away. So yeah, this is just, it's sad to see, but this is what is happening tonight in several areas of the city as they have protesters coming in and out doing this.
You know, I'm looking at these guys, and they're wearing black. Some of them have black hoodies on, and they look similar to the guys that we saw breaking into the shoe store.
They do.
From above.
Actually, they do, and you wonder.
And hanging out outside that one nail salon that where they took the ATM.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, this is like a concentrated group?
Is it the same group that's running through and causing a lot of this damage? It makes me wonder. I mean, I can't tell who they are. It's a strange fact that everybody's wearing masks,
Leaving
but look at that.
Loads of things. Did we find out what kind of business this is?
531 North something. What street is this, Leanne?
Yeah, I'm here. We're on Fairfax. I have another one. Were you tell me what's your name?
My name's Abel Rivera.
Abel, you were just saying that you were here in 92. Were you around? You saw what happened with the protest and all of the riots then. What is happening tonight? What is your sense?
Tonight what happened was they gave everybody a ticket and they rounded everybody up. And these kids got no guidance. In 200 years, this has been going racism for 200 years. We know the story. Nobody's stupid. These kids have no guidance. They have no one to lead them. This is it's a major movement. It's like they're my army. If no one's willing to step up to guide these kids, I will.
Put that camera down.
Down this hill, pretty good amount here.
Even worse.
This is the sort of thing you track on a
Most of the crowd is onto this very front lawn here at this point. Gets you really fast. That is for sure.
happening
Oh
in,
wow.
oh boy.
Okay. Wow. Let's take that shot. All right. Well,
angry
as
at our
we said,
cameras,
they're
though.
angry.
Uh-oh.
They're. You got a good shot of that guy's face. If something happens to our cameraman, that's the guy who did it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we need to get out of there.
Yeah,
Might
it
be a good
doesn't
idea
look
to get
safe
out
at
of there.
all.
This is not safe. That was an
But-
assault. At least 2 acts of assault there. 3 now against our camera person out there who stood his ground.
Hopefully is okay. We've heard of looting that's happening in downtown Los Angeles on Broadway. A jewelry store apparently has been looted. There is a smell of smoke in downtown. There's some fires apparently on the street like they were doing at the Fairfax district. We haven't, let's see, maybe Chris will be able to get shots of that soon.
All right, and what we're looking at here, Chris Christie, are you with us? Is that Melrose?
No, we have a call of something going on at Melrose. We're trying to make our way over there, but there's so much going on in terms of LAPD mobilizing across town. It's easy to get distracted. But give me just a second. We'll be right back with you. But apparently something is happening near. Near. Actually, what was that cross street, Jay? I'm sorry.
All right, well, yeah, so we're going to keep an eye on that, and also we're going to try to figure out what's happening in downtown Los Angeles right now. But apparently now there's reports that they've hit 5 different stores in downtown Los Angeles. We saw that big police presence, Mark, and now they are walking the streets. I'm looking at video right now on my Twitter feed of the PD walking down the street.
Yeah, so what we had there at 5th and Broadway in Los Angeles was our camera position. I don't know who our cameraman was there, but he was clearly assaulted by a bunch of people who ran up on him. And in addition to making obscene gestures at the camera, actually, I think one of them pushed him. And then 2 of them threw water.
Let's walk together, guys.
way. We did see that with the Floyd family and other civil rights leaders. And I think the second thing is people like myself that do have a civil rights organization that have been involved with this issue for a long time. I'm talking about the battle against and for social justice and against racism and also police misconduct. We also have a role to play, and that role is we have to speak out loud and long, saying, look, we're frontline fighters for justice too, but we do it the right way. And we encourage others that, in fact, believe in justice, do it the right way too, because at the end of the day, that's the most effective way. Not looting a store, but actually the kind of protest, the kind of demonstration, the kind of programs that are being advocated for justice. Those are the kinds of things that we have to keep our eye on, and we have to keep pushing and reminding other people do the same.
It has been widespread, and we were hoping that this curfew would, go into effect and be sufficient. But it's looking like downtown Los Angeles. There's some more things happening there and getting worse. So we're going to keep an eye on that one and try to get there overhead and see what's happening on that Broadway street where they were having officers deployed there. They were walking the streets. We saw looting happening. And our photographer, hopefully, we're going to find out if our photographer's okay.
Yeah, it sounded like, it looked like he was okay. For one thing, he kept shooting. He kept rolling, which is what all news photographers are trained to do. When you're out somewhere and something is happening, good, bad, or whatever, even if it's threatening your safety, you keep rolling to at least document what's happening to you. And so we had a real close shot of a guy who walked up to the camera position and pushed him. It appears he pushed him because the camera tilted up suddenly and went out of focus. But right before it went out of focus, that guy's face is burned into my mind, too.
Yes. Would you be able to spot him?
I'd be able to spot him. I'd be able to pick him out of a lineup, and I will if I have to, but God knows. Anyway, so our report, he's there. And our reporter, we hope and we think that because of what happened that he has had to move, but he's not given up for the evening. He's just going to change positions and move into a place where he is a little safer to do the job that he has been doing.
It's a really difficult challenge because, as your air support journalist mentioned, you know, they move them from one place and they move to another. So what you've got to do is systematically look at the grid map and decide how you're going to move across the grid, clear everything, and make sure that no one or no people are behind you at the same time. It's very methodical. It takes a lot of patience. You can see their officers walking block to block, and they're making sure that no one's out there, no one's in those store locations, and they'll do this until they are absolutely concerned that, or I should say, they absolutely have cleared the area. And then
This must be exhausting too, because they're on foot. They're, you know, and it's mentally exhausting because they don't know what they're going to face, but just physically exhausting. And then they have to get in their patrol cars and move to another area. It's just got to be so tedious and tiring.
It is, but I will say this, you know, fortunately having been there and done that, and I thank these men and women for their service. They're extremely fit. They know what the job entails. They're working 12-hour shifts. They're going to be really, really safe about doing this. They're going to be secure, and they're going to be patient. And if they do all of those things, no one will get injured on their side. Nobody need be injured on the civilian side, and everybody will be fine and go home at night.
As someone who teaches, who is a professor now and is very active in the community as well, how do you make sure when you talk to your students that we don't lose the message, the original message of what happened in Minneapolis?
Well, this again it's really one of humanity.
Booth, where do you want me to shoot? Do you want me to go back to the fire? Where would you like?
You were just listening to our chopper there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Errol.
That's okay. You know, even though we're talking about law enforcement and use of force, there is a basic humanity here that I always remind my students. And as you know, I teach counterterrorism classes. I teach classes on violent extremism. But there's a humanity component here, and there's a humility component here. So that's what's really important. You know, I have to at least say that LAPD changed when the department started to reflect some of those communities that they serve. And so the message won't be lost when we understand that people need a voice. They need a voice in the community. They need a voice in the department. And I do want to say this, you know, what happened to Mr. Floyd is unacceptable. But I do want to say that the large majority of law enforcement in America are law-abiding, ethical, and really good human beings that do a great job every day. And this is a small minority of officers that should not be officers and should have never gotten past the screening process. So the thing I emphasize, so this won't be lost, is never forget where you came from, never forget who you serve, and never forget who you are. And I think that's going to be really important going forward. We can honor the Floyd family and many other men that died, unfortunately, in situations like this if we do that, if we, at the end of the day, we try to be good human beings.
Well, we kept hearing that call for justice, and a lot of people who came out today, that is what they wanted. They wanted to put that message out there, but they had a peaceful message. And then, you know, we saw it ruined by a few individuals as we look at...
A sense of, you know, the jurisdictional kind of boundaries and where we are, because that might explain why the sheriff showed up, or it could be a mutual aid thing. This is Melrose. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This would be...
It's Melrose and Spalding.
Yeah, which I think would put us technically in West Hollywood. No, it's LA City. We're still in the Fairfax district.
I see,
adjacent. Yeah. We're West Hollywood adjacent. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar, for those of us that may not be familiar with the jurisdictions, West Hollywood is governed by the LA County Sheriff's Department, while the surrounding area is all part of the city of LA, technically, and guarded by the Los Angeles Police Department. But on a night like tonight, those boundaries are practically blurred, if not invisible. Because everybody's just trying to help out wherever they can. And even with the help of Orange County agencies now making their way into the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, we're not seeing any fires in the street like we were earlier today. And we'll have to check in with Leanne and see how, well, I take that back. In Leanne's shot that we'll show you in a bit, there is a little fire behind her, but let's see.
Unfortunately, my concern is that if the fire was able to make its way to the roof, the question is, did somebody climb on the roof and set that fire, or is there a raging fire inside the building that has made its way into the attic or to the roof of the building, because now you can see a lot of smoke coming from the front. So that we may be looking at a building that's just completely.
Well, the first thing I would say is I thank him for putting the curfew in place. I think that was absolutely critical. The second thing I would say is I go back to the playbook of 1992. We sat down, meaning the community sat down, leaders from the faith-based community, law enforcement, athletes and celebrities in LA, activists, all sat at the table and said, look, how did we get here? And they talked through it. I would convene a roundtable. Since we're on Zoom, it's probably easier to do because everybody's at home. I'd convene roundtables of people around the city and start having this conversation, start to come up with a playbook about how we're going to move forward as a city, how we're going to recover, not just from this, but from COVID, how we're going to reopen, and how we're going to build the bridge again. And I have these conversations now. And as I said, I'm not putting anyone on the spot, but look, we're all at home. It's not hard to find people. So I think we could have these conversations starting tomorrow.
Were you surprised when you saw all the police chiefs gather together this week and condemn what happened in Minneapolis?
I was not surprised. You know, we understand there are bad cops, and I was not surprised at all. There's not a chief